All right, it looks like we've got a pretty good group with us. So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to today's Skills Kickstart on Invoices and Templates. Your presenters today are Lori and Tim. We want to make sure we get all of your questions answered today. So if you have any throughout the session, go ahead and throw them in that Q&A or chat feature, and I will make sure to get them over to your presenters. And with that, I'll pass it off to you two.
All right, thanks so much, Jazzy. Hello, and welcome everyone to this Skills Kickstart session on invoices and templates. As Jazzy said, I'll be one of your presenters today. My name is Lori Hamill. I am the manager of customer enablement here at Encompass. I've been with the company for about 5 years now, and you may remember me from some admin trainings, things like accounts receivable, pricing and promotions. I've really focused a lot of my work and knowledge in the Encompass tool around the administrative type processes. My co-presenter here today, I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Yes, I'm Timothy Sinfield. I'm one of the support analysts here at Encompass. I've been here for just about 2 years, focusing also mostly on admin work.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So I'm going to just briefly go over our agenda for today. In this session, we're going to touch on the data model of how we compose these different templates that make up your invoicing sort of processes, the way you display yourself to your customers. And we're going to talk about all the document types that play a role in that. Then we'll be spending the majority of our time actually editing an invoice template in the template designer. So we're going to quickly go over those handful of things, and then we'll get into the meat of it with the template designer itself. So starting with our templates document, or our templates documents data model, these template documents always by default start off at that location level. Every location in your system, and in my test site, in my demo database, I have 3 locations. Every location has its own document template that has invoices associated with it. But when we need further diversification, when we have different levels of granularity and agreements involved, we can set different document templates at the chain level or the customer's level. And to further add to that, we have the ability to put them on split invoices. And because split invoices can also be set at the chain and customer level, we can find that there's different invoices for a lot of different things on a per customer over customer basis, depending on where that split invoice is set and if that has a document template on it. So this is what that looks like, is that we start with the chain, it's always there. I'm sorry, we start with the location, it's always there. And then opportunities at the chain and customer and split invoice level to further tease that apart and have different templates set for different reasons. In our template designer in Encompass, it gives us the same editing options for both purchases and invoices. So when we log into that template designer, we would select either a purchase or an invoice to begin editing. And this editor gives us what we call what you see is what you get editing. It's a WYSIWYG editor, if that's ever a term that you've heard. But it just means that what I am editing live in the screen, when I drag and drop boxes or move things around, when I set those different widths or lengths or heights, I'm editing it in real time and I can see it before my eyes. I don't have to go in and say padding -17 in order to get it to be in the position that I want it to be. I simply drag it with my mouse where I want it to be. So that's what it is when we get into that template designer. But I think the best way to showcase some of this is using a more real world scenario. We're going to make some changes to one of these templates so that we can see how we would make them, how we would edit it. So imagine that the Booze Clues corporate AR specialist reaches out to me here at the test site, and they say, as a part of our ongoing partnership, I wanted to reach out and inform you of some changes we'd like to see for our invoices in the new year. Instead of the load sheet number, which doesn't really help us on our side much, I'd like you to put in the invoice due date. And in addition, I want you to add the retail units that we're purchasing into the columns in the main body of it. So a couple of changes, pretty simple. no big deal. If you can go ahead and get those done and let us know, we'd like to see it for our next delivery. So we say, okay, Maya, happy to help with that. I'll go ahead and get started on it, and we are going to get into that demo now. So I'm going to get logged into my test site here, and this is where I would be making any of those changes in the template designer. In order to get us up to the template designer, I want to spend just a second figuring out which template I need to have changed. If I have multiple templates in this site, and I do, I want to make sure that all of those other things stay the same, and we're just making changes to the things that she's requesting. But if I have templates set at the location, chain, customer, and split invoice level, then which one is the right one to make changes to? We're going to start off by looking at that location. So starting at the highest level of our data model of that hierarchy, I'm going to navigate to the locations table. And what I want to do is find my document templates. I can see that it is set to the Pioneer default. Now, when I say that this is a document template, there's actually 3 invoice types that are set here. And I can see them if I click into this document template. I have an invoice, I have a bill of lading, and I have a spot for a quote template. Now, this isn't a part of the organization that sends out quotes, so we haven't set a quote template. But if I had one, it would be set here. It would be as simple as, editing or creating a template and then filling in this box the same way that I would anything else. I just click to edit and select the record that I want. But I see that my invoice template is set to Pioneer default. So I know that at bare minimum, this is the template that Maya wants me to edit. So I'm going to keep that one in mind as I go through the rest of it. So what I want to do next is I looked at the location, and I know that it was for our Sterling location and that it is the Pioneer default template. But let's take a look at chains, because I want to see my Booze Clues chain. So if I navigate into the chains level, I'm looking for this invoices and templates section, and there is not a document template set. So what this is currently telling me is that without something set at the chain level, the default template of Pioneer default is what would get pushed through. But there's 3 other places that I want to look, starting with the split invoices at the chain level. So I'm going to click into the subtables, add that split invoices subtable record, and I can see that there aren't split invoices set up for this chain. So my top candidate for editing is still that Pioneer default invoice, because I don't have anything set at the chain or chains split invoices. But let's take a look at the customer though, just to make sure. So if I go into customers and view these, what I'm looking for now are my document templates. I do see that several of them have the Pioneer default with AR set as my document template, but let's also look at those split invoices. Because if I have split invoices set, like I do on Booze Clues number 4, if those have a document template, then that's something I would need to know about. Now, what I would probably do in this case is that because I have Pioneer default set as the document template on 2 out of 4 of my Booze Clues, what I would probably do is set this now at the chain level so it overrides the document template at the customer level. I'm going to want those chain rules to trump what's happening for the individual customers. And because I don't have that split set on split invoices, it's going to go with that chain level information and make sure that we're pulling the document from there. So now that I know which one I need to edit, and it isn't Pioneer default with AR new, it's just Pioneer default, we are going to go over to those templates. So using this universal search bar, we are going to find our templates table. And this is where I can see if it is an invoice, a purchase, a bill of lading, a quote, any of these different kinds of things that I would be able to edit. But I'm looking now for my Pioneer default. Did I not spell that correctly? I did not. All right. Pioneer default is what I want to edit to make sure that I am setting this appropriately and hierarchically. So now that I have filtered this to my Pioneer default template, it's when I click on this little icon here next to the arrow that will open up the template designer. I can see that when I hover over it, it gives me that prompt. If I arrowed into this record, I would also see it as a button at the top of the page. So I don't have to click multiple times. I'm going to go ahead and click on this template designer. And now we have done the research to figure out which template we need to edit so that it preserves the things that Booze Clues wants me to save, and it adds the things that, or will add the things that they're requesting to add or substitute. So when I look at this template designer, I see that there is an image here, but this actually doesn't look like it's particularly centered to me. So I'm going to go ahead and move this over. If I wanted to do some more fine tuning, this is what I mean by it's a WYSIWYG editor, is that when I drag this around, when I drag this image where I want it to go, we can see it repositioning in real time that it's doing that. I want this to be more centered, and I'm going to center it above that invoice memo that I can see there. But if I wanted to tinker with these positions, I absolutely could. So I could do some fine tuning here if I knew what the absolute center of position X and position Y was for this header. So it's a mixture of things. I could also change the height and width of this image, but I'm going to leave it as square. So now that I have adjusted that image a little bit, I do want to save those changes because what I've done is edit my master template. So there's a difference between save and save as. And when I save, it means that I've just saved this change for everybody at this location who is using this invoice template Pioneer default. But I didn't change any of the other templates. I've only made a change to it. Ultimately, what I need to do is I do need to make those changes, and I want to make them specifically for Booze Clues. So I've clicked save, but now I also want to split this off into its own invoice template for Booze Clues. So I'm going to click save as and give this a new name. This is going to be Booze Clues Invoices. And I would be able to set my template type here. I'm going to leave it as invoice, but be aware that your options are bill of lading and invoice quote, just like we saw on that document template. So with a template name entered and a template type selected, I'll go ahead and click on Save As. And what I expect to happen is that it's now made a perfect replica of my Pioneer default template. And all I have to do now is select my new Booze Clues invoices in order to see that. So with those two templates that currently look exactly the same, let's go back to Maya's requests. So what Maya wanted was to substitute the invoice due date for load sheet number. And we'll go ahead and find that now in the template designer. And I see that here on the header bar, kind of. We see load sheet and load sheet number. So it looks like it's duplicated. But what the difference here is that this load sheet, the thing on top, is the label for this cell. So I'll want to change what this label is saying from load sheet to due date. And I'll do that simply by clicking on it to select it. And we can see now in this side panel that I have some editing tools available to me. So I'm going to find my field name and I will replace the word load sheet with due date. And when I click off of this, I'm not expecting this header to change. Now, I know that this font is a little bit small, so it's kind of hard to see, but the next step after I enter that in is to click apply. If you can read that this load sheet, this header still says load sheet, watch what happens when I click this. I can see that it's pushed that change that I typed in into the visual editor now. So what I have is a cell that's labeled with due date, but it has a dynamic field that would automatically pull in that load sheet number because I haven't updated that. So it'll be a similar process, but instead of typing that in, when I click my dynamic field instead of the string field, I'll choose that from the drop-down menu. So clicking on load sheet number, and now coming back into this editing side panel, I'll look in this list for my due date field, and I'll substitute that in. So I've selected the field from the list that I want and click apply. This pushes the change into the visual editor so I can now see that it is populating that dynamic field for invoice due date. Now, Maya's other request was to add the retail units to this invoice. And when I look it over, I want it to go, I think, down here in the transactions section, because instead of it just totaling up those retail units, I want to show them to her for each product. We may fulfill that product in cases or eaches, but she wants to see the retail units that she's ordered. So I'll go ahead and click in to edit this transactions section. And now I'll want to add that column. Now, when I look at these columns, I'm going to think about where I want it to be placed because where I click matters right now. If I wanted this column to go at the end, I might click here on this last column or nowhere, and it would add it at the end. If I want it to go in between the ID and the quantity, the units ordered, then I would click on the quantity column because it will now add to the left in between ID and quantity. So I've clicked on my column and I'm going to return now to this side panel with it selected and open. Now, I don't want to delete this column. What I do want to do is add a new one. And I can do that here in the transaction properties. So I'll start by entering a width, and we're going to put in 30 pixels here. And when I click add, what I expect to happen is that it's not going to take a sum total of 30 pixels away from these other columns, but it is going to push it out. So I already know that I'm expecting to need to edit the widths of these other columns next to it. So I'll click add, and just as I thought, it's going to push this out. So we're going to circle back on that. Let's go ahead and make the adjustments to this column to make sure that 30 is the right amount of width for this. I don't think I want to take any width away from our product IDs or quantities. So I'm going to start by clicking into this column header. Right now it has the word detail, and that's obviously not the right thing. So I'll hand type something in to be my column header. To do that, we are not going to select from this drop-down menu, although that's what it looks like we need to do for this field name. I have to check the box in order to make it so I can put my cursor into the field name and enter the string that I want. Now, in limited amount of space, I don't have the room I might want to type in the full words, retail units. So I'm going to abbreviate this as RU. And again, just like I've done in the header section, in order to push this into the template designer so that I can see it, I'll need to click apply. And we can see that it's changed the word detail to the two letters I've entered RU. And I will do the same thing for the dynamic value under that column header. So instead of it being column 4 and not pulling anything in, I'll select that where I want my dynamic field to go and choose from the drop-down menu the most appropriate option. Now, as I scroll through these, I know from looking at this in the past that there's a few different options for retail units, and we're going to take a look at what the best one for this might be. So I have retail price by case, which is not what Maya asked for. I have retail units ordered and retail units per case. So in this case, I think that it's either going to be retail units ordered or retail units per case. And I could go back to Maya and ask which one she wants, but it doesn't make sense to me to put in retail units per case based on this request. I think she wants retail units ordered, because if she's asking for this to be on a template with the units ordered, it won't matter that there are retail units per case that weren't fulfilled in like a backstock or something like that. So we're going to enter in those retail units ordered. And again, I continue to reinforce this. The magic button that makes all of this work is to click apply. Now, uh, the way that I am able to preview some of this information is by getting an invoice number in order to preview it. So give me 1 second to get that invoice number. I put it in a note and of course hid that note from myself. Here we go. We're just going to share this bad boy again. And when I come back into the template designer, if I enter this invoice number into the space provided and click print preview, I can now see exactly what an invoice in my system would look like with some of these changes. Let me zoom in here so that we can see them a little bit better. And what I can see is that where I had the load sheet number, I now see a due date. And because I looked at this invoice, I know that that's accurate. This invoice was due on February 18th. Now I can also see in here that my retail units column is pulling as expected, that the quantity ordered is displaying in those full cases, and I can see the retail units for each of these products. But I can also see that this is running off the side of the page, and that's not ideal. Realistically, we will want them to be able to print this and see the whole darn thing. So I'm going to go ahead and hit close, and let's make some of those adjustments to column width. So because I've added 30 pixels, I know that I need to take 30 pixels out from somewhere, and product is probably a pretty good candidate for it because it's already so wide. So let's go ahead and take 30 out of here. So that would be 198, I think. That was only 20, wasn't it? 188. There we go. And so now I've adjusted my columns to fit right within the bleed of this page. It'll give us the right margin so that nothing gets cut off if we do physically print out that copy. Now I've entered that width. We're going to click apply. I'm going to just print preview this one more time. And I can see that my margin looks so very tidy. Love that. All right, we're going to go ahead and hit close. And the last step we're going to take in order to make these changes stick is that we've clicked apply multiple times now to send our edits into the main body of this page, right? Every time we added or edited a string of text, every time we updated that dynamic field, every time we have changed the width, we've hit apply. But what we haven't done is save it. So if I navigate away from this, none of my changes will stick. I've clicked apply, but this last thing we need to do is save this template. Now, what I would also probably want to do is take this template and put it on a new template document so that I can set that template document on my Booze Clues chain. But before we do that, I want to come back to our presentation because Tim has a few things he'd like to tell you.
Perfect. Let me share my screen. Where is the right one? I apologize, it's not showing me the right one. All right, perfect. So I want to dive into a little bit about the mobile template designer. Lori did a great job explaining regular template designer, but it is a little bit different on mobile. So the first thing that I want to cover is how do you actually get to mobile template designer? Followed by what are the differences? And we'll follow up with what are string values. So just like Lori, I also got Maya reached out to me as well, asking me to do the same request. We want to put that, we want to substitute the invoice. We want to put in the due date for the load sheet number, as well as add in those retail units, but this time just on the mobile side. So let's dive right into it. I have the template designer pulled up here. A few things I want to note. I do have the template that Lori's been working on. We can see all of the changes that she made, as well as I have an invoice number here. If you want to get to template designer for mobile, you just need to open up template designer. Then on the far right, top right corner, you'll see an action button for template designer for mobile. When you click this, it'll push you over. But one thing I want to note here, while it did use the template we had, I did lose my invoice number. So I definitely recommend to have that nearby. I was already prepared for it. And yeah, so let's go into this. So the first thing I want to point out here is it's a little bit different from regular template designer. If I want to take some information and put it in, like I want to add a text field, all you need to do is take it and you drag it over and then it appears. And then if you wanted to remove it, you can take it and drag it off screen and it disappears. There's not a right or wrong side. If I wanted to drag it over here, it'll work as long as it's not in this box. But maybe you go, I want to add a text to the footer. If I try to take this text field and drag it over, no matter how many times I do it, it won't happen. And that's because just like in regular template designer, everything's broken up from the header, the transaction, and the footer. So for this section, it's header. So all of this information can be dragged over here. If I wanted to put a text box in the footer, I'd need to click on footer and then I can drag it over and it will go. So the first request that was asked of us is they wanted us to put a due date in. So what we're going to do, their invoice number, the load sheet number was right here and I took it. We're actually going to remove that as well as the date. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for due date. Now, there's one really cool feature when it comes to mobile template designer, and that's string values. If something's added on the regular template designer, you can actually bring it over directly for mobile. So I know Lori added the due date title. So if I scroll down here in these string values, I see due date and I can drag this over. The nice part about these string values is if you update something on the regular template designer, it'll automatically update what that value is on the mobile version. So I put the due date in here, but that's looking a little too big for me. I don't like how much of the area it's covered, so I'm actually going to cut it in half. If I want to change the width of anything on here, I just need to click on the actual box, and then on the far right, you can adjust the width. I'm going to, for now, just kind of cut it in half and see how it looks. And that looks good. I still see the word due date and there's a little extra space. So I like that as is. So I'm going to keep that. And now we want to actually add the due date value that provides the correct due date. For that, we're just going to need to scroll through and it's all alphabetical. So it's not too bad until we find due date. So I'm going to take this and drag it over. And now that's covering some text here and I definitely don't want that. So I'm going to cut this in half as well because 10 seemed to work the first time. So if it is not broken, don't fix it. And looks like they are fitting in here. So what we'll want to do at this point is let's test it. I do have my example invoice and I just want to make sure this is all looking the way I want it to. I click print preview. I've got my due date right here as well as the actual date. And I know that's the right date I had checked ahead of time. So I know that is good. So I am happy with that. And we can go ahead and move on to those retail units. So there is a little bit of a space in here. I want to put it right here because Lori put it between the ID and the quantity, and I want it to look exactly the same. So there's no question of if it's legitimate or not. So let's take a look here. I have a little bit of space, but I want a little bit more. This might be a little hard to see, but I'm going to point this out by zooming in a little bit. In the mobile template designer, there are these little boxes. Each one of these boxes is a width. So for example, in this area right here, I have 2 width. I don't think that's gonna be enough. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take product and I'm gonna shrink it by 2. I'm gonna take it from 30 to 28 because I think 4 is gonna be a good number. Just like I did with the product, I need to do it to the product name as well so that everything is matching. And that looks good, but I've got a space here and a space here. I'm going to just drag everything over because I want these retail units to be between the quantity and ID. I want it to match Lori's as much as possible. So I am in the transaction settings. I know Lori put in RU as a title, so all I have to do is scroll until I find that yellow RU. Perfect. And I'm going to drag it over. And I know because I see these four boxes that this will be exactly four width. Oop, four width, and it fits in perfectly. So that's exactly what I wanted. And the other thing that we want to do is we want to make sure we put in the right retail units ordered because that's the one that Lori did. We want everything to look the same from the regular template to the mobile template. That's the goal here. And we're going to go ahead and drag this over just like before. I know four is the right answer here, so I'm going to put four. And now that this all looks good, it's all as I expected, it's time for me to click print preview again and test. So looks like it's not working completely right here. I'm getting $18, but I'm not getting those retail units. So maybe I put something in wrong here. I did retail price per case. I did not catch that. That's okay. This is why we use the print preview. I'm just going to drag it off screen and I'm going to do retail units ordered. That's the correct one. And this is why we always test because sometimes you might put something in without realizing and you want to catch it ahead of time. And it does not like me changing its width. There we go. So now I've got the width and it's time to test again. And perfect. I am seeing those retail units as I would expect. So good thing that we tested it. Now, one thing I want to mention when print previewing on mobile template designer, as you take a look here, this looks like a regular piece of paper. And that's because it absolutely is. When you're using the print preview on mobile, it does not adjust it for the Zebra printers. So one thing I strongly recommend, once you have everything all built out and it's all looking as expected, grab one of those Zebra printers and go ahead and test print this just to make sure it's all looking as expected. But in this case, everything's looking good. I have it exactly like I think Maya wants. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. And I'm actually going to go ahead and flag Maya down. And in this situation, let's say I did, and she came back to me and she says, you know what? The customer doesn't want RU for this. They want XX. Can you change that? Well, we absolutely can. If you're trying to do it in the mobile version, because this is a string value, you cannot. This is not an editable field. But if we jump back to template designer, I can do it here and it will transfer over. So I have my RU right here and they wanted it to be updated to XX. That's what the customer wants. We're more than happy to do that. We'll click apply, confirm that it's here, and we will go ahead and save. And then what I'm going to do is just hop right back to the mobile version. And as you can see, XX was automatically updated. There was no action needed for mobile. So that's really the value of those string values when you have them, is it allows you to make that change on both places without having to jump to extra steps. So we were able to get everything that Maya wanted. We got that due date in and the retail units, and we made that last minute change, and everyone is happy. So we were able to complete the task, but we're going to jump here to our key takeaways.
Now, Tim, really quick, we did have a question for you.
Of course.
Now, on that server invoice editor, Lori was clicking apply every time, but you didn't have to do that on the mobile side. Should you be looking for an apply button on the mobile template as well?
Great question. There is no apply button here on the mobile template. It is just a drag and drop feature. So once you've dragged it into the box, like right here, and it appears in that box, oop. Oh, I'm in the transaction setting. I'm going to go to the header. And once it appears, it's been applied. There is no apply button or anything like that, but also have no fears. Nothing is saved here until you click that save button. So feel free to mess around if you add a bunch of things in here and then go, you know what? I actually don't like any of that. I don't remember how it was originally set. Just refresh the page and all of those changes are done. So have no fear. Mess around with it. As long as you don't click the save button, you're not going to break anything and you can always refresh it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Of course. And jumping back to those key takeaways here, when invoices display as expected, you're more likely to get paid as expected. In my time, I've gotten some unusual bills. Those are ones I'm very hesitant to pay. I'm wanting to talk to people. I'm wanting to confirm multiple times. I'm wanting to get another bill because it looks unusual to me. Making sure they display as expected will make sure people pay as expected. We don't want to cause issues where people are worried that the invoice isn't legitimate. So make sure they maintain that professionality. Next, invoices are the face of your company to your customers, and it can impact your open AR. For the most part, these customers might be dealing with the salesperson or the delivery person, but the people who pay for it are going to be looking at the invoice. That's more or less the face of your company. Make sure it maintains that professionality. And finally, group and set invoice templates on any level and move them around as needed. These are not permanent. Once you put this template onto like a chain, a customer, or a location, it's not permanent and it's not required to stay. If you need to change it, change it. If you wanted to, you could change it daily. I probably wouldn't recommend that. Customers would probably be confused by the invoices, but you can. Don't think that these are permanent things by any means. Adjust them as business needs adjust. And on that note, are there any last minute questions?
I haven't seen any other come through yet, but that is not to say that we don't have any time left. So if you are in here, go ahead and throw ahead your any questions that you still have in the chat and Q&A while I wrap up here. I just want to thank Lori and Tim for your time today. Thank you for showing us everything about Template Designer and Invoices. We have a few more sales kickstarts to wrap up our spring season here before we head into BevAge. We hope to see you guys at BevAge as well. Go ahead and register for that. We have some great labs that you'll probably see some of our faces there as well. So we hope to see you there. There will be a short survey that pops up at the end of this session that just has a few questions to help us make these sessions better. And there is a question about some topics that you could suggest if you have an idea for us. Still not seeing any other questions come through quite yet. We'll give it a couple more seconds here. Otherwise, we will wrap up for the day and see everybody in the next one. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Have a good
you.
one.
Bye.